Hey there folks, welcome back for Module 2 of the Microsoft MD-100 course. The main sections we'll be covering in this module is firstly authentication, and then we'll move on to configuring user account control, which is also known as UAC for short. Then lastly, we'll have a look at implementing device registration. Like we said in the previous videos, the items I've just listed is simply the main sections in this specific module. It's not all the topics we'll be discussing. If you want a more accurate or better list of what's going to be discussed in this module, you can of course just go check the video description down below. I've got a nice little list there for you guys, also with convenient timestamps if you're looking specific video. Okay, and then before we jump into the first section of this module, if you haven't done so already, please boink the like button. It helps to get this free content out there to more people that actually need it and who can afford to pay for studies. So you just won't be doing me a favor, you'll also be doing a favor for the folks that don't have money for material. Lastly, if you yourself would like to know when the next modules gets uploaded, remember to also hit the subscribe button. Now that we have my selfless promo out of the way, I think we can jump into the first section on this list, which is, of course, authentication. Now, within the section of authentication, we're first going to be looking at the subcategory called authentication and authorizations. We first need to establish what the heck is authentication and what the heck is authorization. And also, of course, when and where will we actually apply these two principles. So let's start at the beginning. What is authentication? So authentication, in a nutshell, so to speak, is when you need to prove you are who you say you are. You are indeed the owner to this specific account that you're trying to log on to, or you are indeed the owner to the specific device you're trying to log into. It could be a phone, could be a tablet, laptop, desktop, server, that could be a device. It could perhaps be an account, a local account, domain account, an online account of some kind, a Gmail account, a Facebook account, a YouTube account. You see where we're going with this. So authentication, in a nutshell, is just proving you are who you say you are. You're just basically proving your identity to some sort of platform, is what we're saying. So that's authentication. You can think of authentication as step one. Step one almost always takes place. Now, step two, or you can at least think of it as step two, is of course the other one, which is what is authorization? What the heck is that? Now, this doesn't always take place. It really depends on the platform. It's platform dependent. But once you've done authentication, which is basically step one, authorization is to go and check what level of access you have as that particular person. So if I go and log on to something pretty common and we can all relate to, like a Facebook account, like a Gmail account, once you've logged on and you've proven that that account belongs to you, you of course in most cases have full-blown access to the account. So authorization doesn't exactly take place now, does it? Because you're the only person using that account. So where you can expect to find something like authorization taking place is maybe in a domain situation, for the folks that know what that is. So for the folks not familiar with a domain situation, that's something you would normally encounter in a company environment, a medium to large size company. So you're going to go to the office, you're going to turn on your laptop or your desktop PC, and instead of selecting an account, you are going to type in a username. This username is normally housed on a server of sorts. This is known as your Active Directory server, which has got all user accounts and groups. Not something you guys need to worry about at this point in time. So for now, let's just say there's a server at your company. It houses all the user accounts and all the groups for your organization. And when you type in a username on your machine, it's first going to check, does that username actually exist on our server? If it does, then authentication would occur. Now, once authentication has occurred, obviously you've been granted access, but then it's going to go and check what level of access you have as that particular user. So you're probably working for a company of some kind, and as we know, all people in the companies don't all have the same level of privilege, same permissions in other words. Some people have got full out privilege, like the IT administrators. They can do pretty much whatever they want. They can install things, uninstall things, and configure things. If you go look at the average Joe in the office, sometimes they cannot even install something on their computers. So what level of authorization do you have? Can you access certain resources on your PC or on a network or on servers? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Maybe you can only access certain information and resources on the network or on the servers. So depending on who you are and what account you've logged on with, that is going to determine what level of access you have. Thus, authorization. So what are you authorized to see and access on the servers and the network, in other words. So authentication in a nutshell, that's just checking if you are who you say you are, just double checking. And authorization, in some cases, will be to check if you have access to certain resources, and if so, to what extent you've got access to those resources. Okay, and then speaking of authentication and user accounts, that brings us to user account types. You get many kinds of account types, but we're going to be mentioning 4 specific kinds today. The first one is local accounts. This is probably the most common kind of account you would get, and that is generally when you would authenticate on the device itself. So if you're logging into something like your cell phone, the cell phone is going to check on the device itself if you are indeed the owner to that device or that account. But let's keep it to something we can all relate to. Let's say it's a desktop. So I'm going to have a picture here at the bottom for you guys. I'm going to put 3 computers. I'm only going to use one for this demonstration. The other 2 computers is going to be for the other accounts I'm about to explain in just a second. So looking at the PC, let's say on the left here. If I'm trying to log on to the PC here on the left, and I want to use a local account, you're going to find that you don't have to type in the account. You normally just go and select the account. So as soon as you start the PC up, doesn't matter if it's Windows 10 or 11 or even older, you just click the account. There's usually just going to be 1, maybe 2 or 3, but it's usually just 1. You click the account you want, you type in the password to that account, and that PC or that desktop or that laptop is now going to go check locally on that device itself if that password you've just provided matches that account. It checks it in something called the SAM, S-A-M. It's basically a tiny little database on that computer itself which houses all the user accounts and profiles and stuff. Now, if you think about it, it's probably just going to be like 1 or 2 in there. You know, the average PC only has like 1 or 2 accounts. So it's going to go and check in a tiny little database known as the SAM if that password you just provided matches that account. If it does, which it probably would, assuming you're not trying to hack someone, authentication would occur like we discussed earlier, which is step 1. And in most cases, you'll find you've got full access because it's probably going to be an admin account you're going to be logging on. It's unlikely it's going to be a standard account, although that is something you can go and do. So that is a local account. More on that in just a second. Now, something else you get is a domain account. So I'm going to use the exact same picture I've got here of these 3 machines, except now I'm going to go and add a server here at the top in the middle. So in a domain situation, the PCs would normally be joined to something called a domain. So this is normally something you'd find in a medium to large size organization. In your home environment, you're probably not going to find this. In a small office environment, you also might not find this. This is normally something you'd only find in a medium to large size organization. So these PCs are probably going to be joined to your company domain. So if I had a fake company, it would probably be called BurningIceTech.com. So all 3 of these machines, for argument's sake, I'm going to write it here below the machines, are now joined to BurningIce.com. So what's going to happen is, in the morning when I go to the office and I start my laptop and my desktop, instead of selecting the account like I did with a local account, I will now need to type in the username. So I'm not going to select it, I need to type it in. And once I've selected or typed in my username, I need to provide a password to the username I've chosen. And now my PC is not going to check locally like it did before for a local account. Instead, it's going to go and check on the server I've got at the top in the middle. So it's going to contact a central point of authentication. So we're saying central because all of the machines in your company is joined to the domain. It's not just going to be free like in my picture. It could be hundreds, if not thousands of computers and devices. All of them are going to contact the exact same server. And they're all going to ask the server the same thing. Does that password match that account that's been provided? So my PC, being the one here on the left now, is going to first contact the server now. It's going to say, hey, someone just typed in blah, blah, blah into me. Does this account actually exist? The server is going to go and check and check. You can kind of imagine this as checking the phone book. Server is going to go check, check, check. Does this account actually exist? And if it does, it's going to say, yep, my bro, this account does exist. Then my PC is going to say to the server, okay, cool. If the account exists, can you also check if this password checks out? Does this password this guy provided match that account that I've given you previously? So it's going to say, okay, shot, let me go and check. It's going to go check, 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 and it's going to see, yep, the password also matches the account. And if it does, authentication would occur, and a PC is going to be provided with something called a token. You can think of this as a hall pass, so to speak. In some countries, they've got hall passes in the schools, which basically allow you to walk in the halls during class hours, if you want to go to the restroom or something. You can think of this also as the same as going to an office park. Some countries, if you go to an office park or a business park, where there's a lot of business and stuff, they've got security there, and there's like a boom gate. Before you can even drive onto the premises, there's like a security guard, and they take down your car's details and your personal details, and they're going to ask you, where are you going? Why are you going there? Who are you? All that kinds of stuff. And once you've proven you are who you say you are, they are going to give you some sort of guest or visitor badge. So it's going to be like a sticker or like a little plastic card that you can either stick onto your shirt or use like little alligator clips. And it's going to say guest or visitor. And using that, you can now go and access all kinds of resources on premises. Same with your computer. Once it's got that little token, you can think of it as that little guest or visitor badge you would have had that you can now go and use to visit certain offices. Obviously, that guest or visitor badge has got certain limitations. You cannot just go anywhere. You can just go to certain resources and places. And that token is the same thing. Using that, you can access certain resources, not all. More on that later once we get to the Active Directory section. That actually is a topic somewhere in this course. Can't remember exactly which module. But somewhere in this course, we are going to go into more depth on that specific topic. Now, the third kind of account you get is a Microsoft account. This is also known as a live account. And in some cases, it's also known as an online account. So Microsoft account, live account, and online account, all one and the same. They keep rephrasing the name. It's as if they can't make up their minds. So an online account or live account, whatever you want to go and call it, is used to give you access to additional resources online. So Microsoft says this can now be used. You can use a single account to access multiple benefits. Like you can use it to access your Xbox. You can go use it to access your Microsoft certifications if you wrote any exams. So the same account can effectively be used to access multiple things, gaming or otherwise. Now, Azure Active Directory account or Azure AD account is one and the same. So the AD stands for Active Directory, by the way. So the Azure Active Directory account is pretty much exactly the same as that second one we had, which is a domain account. The difference, however, is an Azure Active Directory account is now in the cloud. So it's still a central point of authentication, but that central point has now moved, shifted. It's not on premises. It's not in your office. It's not on a server in your office. That server is now somewhere else on someone else's property, most likely Microsoft in this case. That's the only real difference here. There's obviously benefits to this and there's drawbacks to this, mostly benefits though. So I can now go and join the domain from anywhere in the world. I can log on from anywhere in the world and I can access resources from anywhere in the world. Those are only some of the benefits. Unfortunately, this is not an Azure course. I'm not going to go too much in depth with that, but that's just to give you guys a taste. So these are the 4 different kinds of accounts you get. Hopefully that makes more sense to you guys. Now, with regards to user accounts, obviously we've got these 4 kinds in front of us. Let's take a look specifically at local user accounts. More specifically at managing your local users and managing groups. So the first thing regarding this topic we want to discuss is how or where do we go about locating these user accounts, these local ones, and these local groups on Windows 10 and on Windows 11. So obviously it's not going to be exactly the same on Windows 10 versus Windows 11. Some guys might know how to go and do it on Windows 10, but you might never have seen it or have done this on Windows 11 yet. Yet being the keyword. Obviously, eventually you're going to do this. And then we also want to discuss how do we go about actually creating new accounts on Windows 10 or Windows 11 and creating new groups on Windows 10 or Windows 11. Keep in mind, this is specifically local users and local groups. So this is on the machine itself. We're not talking about a domain environment or Active Directory environment. That's the next topic that's coming up. So what I've got here going for us is in the background, I've got about 3 virtual machines running. One has got Windows 10, one has got Windows 11, and one has got server installed. So I'm going to be using these virtual machines from time to time to demonstrate where you would find some of these things. So I'm going to first go to my Windows 10 virtual machine, and I'm going to show you guys where and how we go about doing this. And then we do the exact same thing on Windows 11. So let's switch over to Windows 10. All right, folks, here we are on my Windows 10 virtual machine running in the background. So yours might look exactly like this, or it might look slightly different depending on what build you have and what updates you've got and all that nonsense. Not the point. So how do I go about finding my local users and groups, and how do I go about creating new ones when it comes to Windows 10? So Windows 10, you're going to want to go to your new control panel. I suppose you can do it via the old control panel as well. So to find the new control panel, we're going to go here to the bottom left to our start button. So on Windows 10, it's still at the bottom left. And we're going to go to this little sprocket icon. It looks like a little gear icon. If you hover your mouse there, you're going to see it says settings. We're going to click on that. And this is going to open what is known as the settings app. It's effectively the new control panel. The old one is still there on Windows 10, and believe it or not, it's still there on Windows 11 as well. So do not fear. But Microsoft is in the process of phasing out the control panel. So one day is one day, you're going to start your PC, you're going to get an update from Windows, and you're going to find the old control panel is completely gone, completely missing. Now, you might be panicking right now, but the fact of the matter is Microsoft's actually been doing this a long time now. And they've gradually, slowly but surely been removing the old control panel bit by bit, piece by piece, without people noticing. So ever so often when we get updates, they remove something from the old control panel and they'll move it to the new one. So this is basically a transitioning phase. Slowly but surely we're getting used to this new control panel, which is known as the settings app. And eventually one day when they take the old one away, you're not going to go into a flat spin and start panicking because you would have been using this one for quite some time. Now, getting back to the initial topic at hand here, user accounts and groups, where would I find that? Now, looking at all of these options available, you might have more, you might have less. It's obviously going to be under accounts, that much we could have guessed. So I'm going to go click on that sucker. Click on that. And you'll have all kinds of options available here on the left-hand side regarding your accounts. The one we're looking for today is the one that says other user accounts. But in case you're curious, if you were to go here to emails and accounts, you can go and add all kinds of other things like your live accounts and whatever other account you want to go and synchronize, because Windows 10 was designed for the cloud after all. You can go to sign-in options to go and choose all kinds of things regarding security. Not the topic for today, at least not in this specific instance right now. So let's go to other users. If I go to other users, you'll see there's a button here that says add someone else to this computer. So if I click on that, it's going to open an old familiar window. So this is something you would have seen all the way back to Windows XP, even not even further. So you have your users and you have your groups. It, funny enough, looks very much the same on Windows Server, not the topic right now. So whether you're using Windows 10, Windows 11, or even some of the older operating systems, this is going to look almost identical, this little window. So if I go click here on users, either there or wherever, it's going to show me all the local user accounts on this machine currently. So usually you'll have your main admin account. It's probably going to be the name of whatever you chose in the beginning when you installed Windows. I typed in BurningIceTech in the beginning when I installed Windows 10 on this machine. And then you'll have your guest account. And then sometimes there'll be an administrator account on some of these other ones. You will notice that some of these have got like a little white circle pointing downwards. That's very important for the exam. More on that later. But for now, you just need to know that means the account has been disabled. So if you see that on an account, or if you see that on a device driver, or quite a lot of things on Windows, whenever you see that little white circle, little black arrow pointing downwards, it means that component is disabled. And in this case, it's an account. These accounts are disabled by default, and if you want to go and use them, you need to go and right click on these suckers, go to properties, there used to be an enable button, and then somewhere here, there we go, account is disabled. Untick that box, apply and OK, and it'll obviously work. Not going to do that right now. Here you have the ability to go and do all kinds of shenanigans. I can go and right click on an existing account and change the password if need be. I can go right click here and say new user. I can right click on a blank area here and say new user. So it's a potato situation. New user. Give it a name, description, choose a password, and you can go and choose various aspects about the security, of course. Groups is no different. You just go here to groups. It's going to show you all kinds of groups. Keep in mind, these are all built-in groups that comes with Windows. You do have the ability to go and create your own custom groups that you can go and use for whatever purpose you see fit. So one of the main ones, the most popular ones you guys are going to be working with is, of course, the administrators group and, of course, the users group. Here and there, in rare occasions, you might use this one here, remote desktop users, power users, and in some cases, even backup operators. But the main ones you guys are going to be working with is administrators and users. The only ones you need to know for the exam is administrators and, of course, users. Users are just users. They don't really have a lot of permissions. Where administrators, anyone that belongs to this group, can do anything. Install stuff, uninstall stuff, you name it. And by default, whoever made this PC or whoever installed Windows, that account will by default be in the administrators group. So if I were to go and right click on administrators, never mind adding people, I can go and check properties. And we'll find that that account of mine, the main account, is in fact an administrator. At my discretion, I can go here and remove people or add people if need be. That's if we're sharing a PC. It's very unlikely you're going to find yourself doing that on a local PC, so we normally only do this in a network environment on domains. So that is how we do all of the shenanigans on a Windows 10 machine. Just in case you were wondering about the old method would have been via control panel. Not sure if that's even still available. So if I start typing in control panel, it would have been under users. I haven't been in here in donkey years. So let's just go in there. And then somewhere here you'll be able to go and add more people and stuff. So you can see this looks very different than what I'm used to. It doesn't even look the same anymore. So I'm going to close this up for now, and I'm going to switch over to Windows 11. So let's go over to Windows 11.
A few moments later.
And here we are on Windows 11. Now for the folks that have not seen Windows 11 yet, it does not necessarily look like mine, at least in the sense if you look at the taskbar and all that. So icons wise, yes, you're going to find those same icons, but depending on what kind of machine you're running is on and what your graphics card drivers looks like and all that kinds of shenanigans, you might find that your taskbar will look nice and transparent, and all your menus would look nice and transparent. It's all about your your settings and your graphics drivers and all that. So mine is running on a virtual machine, and as you know, virtual machines don't exactly have fancy graphics cards, but it's still going to serve its purpose. So the first thing you're going to notice is at the bottom left, there's no start button. It's now here. There we go. There's the start button right there. It's in the middle somewhere. Now, inside the preview and the leaked versions and all that of Windows 11, you could actually go and drag this to the left. You could have gone and unpinned that and drag it to the left. It seems at the moment, if I try and drag that, it doesn't give me the ability to go and drag the start button. I don't like that a lot. You still have the ability to go and pin things, of course, to the taskbar and unpin things and, just move them around a little bit if need be. So if I go click on the start button, this is what it looks like, by the way. This is as default as it gets. Anything you use regularly would normally go and show here. More on that later once we get to those sections. So these is as default as we get. I haven't installed anything on this machine yet. I haven't done anything on this machine yet. I literally just installed Windows 11 on this machine probably like 10 minutes ago. So I'm going to go here to settings. And this is what it looks like at the moment. By the time you guys watch this, it's fair to say it might look different because Microsoft's continuously changing every dang thing every second week. So this is just to give you guys a more or less idea where you would find something when I made this video. So by your time, you still be able to find it. Just need to go and dig around a little bit. So I'm going to go here and look for something that says accounts. In this case, there's something that says accounts. Here we go. And if we scroll down further, there's one that says other users. Sign-in options is probably going to be that same security options we saw earlier. There's email. So we see the exact same options we saw in Windows 10. It's just in a different place, of course. I'm going to go there to other users. And here I have the ability that says add other user. So add other users, the exact same thing we would have seen on Windows 10. It's going to open the exact same thing most likely. So let's click on that and see what happens. Yep. It's going to open the exact same thing. Now, I'm not going to go and explain once again the same stuff here because that's obviously the exact same stuff as Windows 10. It's just a matter of how do we get here. But once you get here, it's exactly the same on Windows 10 or Windows 11. There's no difference. Tomato, tomato, potato, potato, same thing. So the only real difference between Windows 10 and 11 is how do we get to that menu, and we've just shown you how you get to that menu. So let's move on to our next topic in my presentation. Alright folks, the next topic is domains and workgroups. Now we did somewhat touch on the topic of domains already, but this was more of a sense for the different kinds of accounts we have. Local, domain, Microsoft, and of course your Azure AD. So from that angle or from that perspective, we cover domains somewhat. But when we need to go and compare domains and workgroups to one another, from that perspective, no, we did not cover it yet. So if you go ahead and just install Windows on your machine, would it be Windows 10 or Windows 11 or otherwise, that machine by default will be on what we call a work group. It's not on a domain. If you want that machine to be on a domain, you need to first of all have a certain version of Windows, normally professional or enterprise. And if it is professional enterprise, the administrator of that machine will need to join it to domain. So just because you're working on that machine doesn't mean you have the ability or the privilege or permissions to join it to a domain. So whoever is the administrator of the domain you want to join, he or she will have to do it for you. You might find that you are the full-blown admin of that machine. You have full privilege on that machine of yours, but yet when you try to join a domain, you have absolutely diddly squat permissions. You will need to go and contact the administrator of whatever domain you're trying to join. It's most likely going to be your company domain, and one of those folks are going to have to come and provide you with their credentials. So let's first take a look at Workgroup, which is the default for your machine. So Workgroup is for the most part a peer-to-peer network, which means you're just connecting directly to other machines in your small home environment or your small office environment. It's very unlikely you're going to find a workgroup situation in a medium to large size company. Generally, workgroups or peer-to-peer, as some people call it, is in a very small office environment or a home environment, obviously. So there's no server involved, nada. There's no centralized management. So in other words, no server. That's the centralized management we're talking about. So there's no server. If there's no server, there's pros and cons to this, benefits and drawbacks. Benefits is it's very easy to go and implement this. Drawback is you don't really have control over your environment, and there's not really exactly a lot of security now, is there? Unfortunately, a work group is also generally limited to about 20 computers. Now, the chances of you having more than 20 computers in the average household is kind of unlikely. In a small office, home office environment, that might actually be possible to have more than 20. So assuming you've got less than 20, you should be okay. But if you start having more than 20, you might want to look at maybe moving towards a domain of some kind. Now, getting to our domain, here we do in fact have a centralized management. So that will be a server of sorts. It's normally a server that's got a role installed, more specifically the ADDS role, stands for Active Directory Domain Services. And when you install that role on a server, it installs software which is known as the Active Directory software, which houses all your user accounts, your groups, your organizational units, and for the most part, your policies and permissions and stuff. It allows you to manage your company. A domain is hierarchical, it is scalable, and information is stored in replicated databases. Now, the last bullet point there, if you want to call it a bullet point, that may or may not be the case. It depends on how big the company is, it depends on how many branches they've got, and it depends on whether they've made clones of the main server to those branches. So the main server will probably be at head office. We quite often refer to this as the root server or the parent server. And at a lot of branch offices, you will quite often find clones of that main parent or root server that you have at head office. These clones at the branch level is normally referred to as RODCs, read-only domain controllers. Now, generally speaking, that means the people at branch level, even if they're IT, do not necessarily have any privilege on those servers. They can see the servers, they're housed on premises, so that the people on branch level can go and authenticate against those servers instead of all of them trying to authenticate over the internet towards the head office one. Many benefits to that. Now, the read-only one, yeah, there's situations where some IT people will have absolutely zero privileges on them. But even though we call it read-only, quite often, more than not, you would find that people do in fact have some level of permission on those servers. Let me give you guys an example. Imagine you've got 20 branches that you're looking after, and you are the main cheese here. You're the main IT guy. And at each branch, there's hundreds of people. Now, even if we just look at something simple like changing people's passwords, do you realize how many people are going to contact you every morning saying, I forgot my password? Just that alone is going to, drive you insane. There's no way you can get to everybody's request with regards to just changing passwords. Just that alone. When you haven't even done anything else yet. So what we do is we delegate. So the higher up guys, we delegate to the lower guys, the juniors, at branch level and all that. So why not delegate something like resetting someone's password? So whoever is a technician at branch level, let's say it's a junior, because we all have to start at rock bottom and work our way up. And that includes myself and it includes you guys. So giving these guys the opportunity to grow, I'm going to take some junior or someone, that's not doesn't have a lot of experience at branch level, and I'm going to give him or her the ability to go and reset people's passwords. So whenever someone at branch level has an issue of their password that expired or they forgot what it was, they will go and contact the local techie and he or she will go and assist them. If there's something more serious that needs attention, then obviously we'll escalate it, and that might eventually reach you. So generally speaking, that's how it works with regards to replicated databases. You might have them, you might not have them. One of the main reasons we'll have that is to take some of the strain, some of the load off the head office server, so that not every weasel is trying to authenticate to the main server at head office, because that's going to render the internet useless in some cases at branch level, and it's also going to put a lot of strain on the server at head office. And the list, of course, goes on. Now, in case anyone is wondering what a workgroup and domain kind of situation looks like on Windows 10 and Windows 11, I'm going to show you guys on those two virtual machines we had earlier. Please once again bear in mind, what you see on my virtual machines is not set in stone. Microsoft's constantly changing the layout and the GUI interface with their updates. So by the time you do this on Windows 10 or Windows 11, it might look different, but the principle will at least stay the same. So let's quickly switch over to my Windows 10 machine first. All right, folks, here we are on that Windows 10 machine again. So I'm going to go to System Properties, well, at least try to. So let's open Explorer here at the bottom. I'm going to go right click here on this option that says this PC, and that should bring up this menu where we're going to go to Properties. And this brings up the Settings app. Now, depending on what build of Windows you have, it might show the old view, it might show the new view. Now, the options we're looking for is way here on the right. Now, something I would like to point out is it will probably not be visible to you by default. So I'm going to drag this here to the middle so you can see what it will look like. This is what you'll most likely see when you open it. So a lot of folks get confused when they get here because they know somewhere here I have the ability to go and, join the domain, rename my PC, amongst many things. And now for the life of me, you cannot find it. So the reason for that is because for some reason it's hidden here on the right hand side. Now, there's no scroll bar here at the bottom or the top indicating that there's a hidden menu here on the right. There's a small little scroll bar here that you can just barely see. You can see now it's appearing, this scroll bar. But just like a moment ago, it was disappeared. It was invisible. So it's difficult. There we go. You can see there's a small little gray line here on the side that appears from time to time. But even if you don't know it's there, or even if you do know it's there, it's hard to see it. I mean, you can see it now, but it's barely there. So I'm going to go and expand this, and now you see some hidden options here on the right. What Microsoft were thinking, I do not know. So luckily on Windows 11, this is not the situation. Now, most of these will take you to the menu you're looking for. It'll just take you on a different tab on that wizard. So the main one we're looking for right now is the one here at the bottom that says rename this PC. But the majority of these other ones will just open the same menu just on a different tab. So I'm going to click on the bottom one, which takes me to this one here. Some of these other ones would have opened the same window effectively, just on a different tab. So you could have just, clicked on the right tab and then you would be there anyway. Now, if you want to go and switch to a different work group, join a work group or join a domain or switch domains, you will be doing it using these two buttons. You could go and use that one there. Most people don't, but you can. And in the day, it's your choice. Most technicians, including myself, normally go and choose this option here. It says change domain, or you want to go and join a work group. So I'm going to click there, change. And you can see by default it's on a work group, and ironically the work group is called work group by default. If you want to join a domain, you're going to go click here. You will type in the respective domain. So in my case, if I had a fake domain, it would probably be called BurningIceTech.com. I would type that in, and as soon as I clicked on OK here, a window would pop up asking you for credentials, administrative credentials. It's going to ask you for a username, which is an admin username. It's going to ask you for a password to that admin username. That admin account is a domain admin account, a domain admin on that domain, whatever domain you're trying to join. So you might not have privilege, you might have to ask for assistance. Now, if you get some sort of other message popping up, not the one asking you for credentials, that could mean an indication that something is wrong. Your IP address is configured incorrectly, you might have a firewall that's blocking you, maybe network discovery is not turned on your machine. There could be a whole long list of things that might be the problem here. So it could be that they're not on the same network maybe. So make sure they're on the same network. Make sure they have an IP. Make sure the IP is in the same range. Make sure the firewall is not blocking you. Make sure these machines can ping one another, and the list of troubleshooting steps, of course, goes on. So that is where you go and join a domain. If you happen to be on a domain already, you can actually leave the domain by just going to workgroup. You can literally type in anything in there. You can make something up. You can even just go type workgroup, and you can literally then right after joining a workgroup, you can go back here to domain. As easy as that. Now, something you should be aware of, as soon as you join a domain, whether it be on a server or a client computer like the one I'm on right now, as soon as you join the domain successfully, the machine generally wants to restart. So make sure you do whatever it is you need to go and do, like saving documents and stuff, before you try this stunt, because the machine is probably going to restart on you, and you will not always have the opportunity to go and save your documents afterwards. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Now, how do we do this on Windows 11? Let's quickly switch over to Windows 11.
A few moments later.
Here we are on Windows 11 again, folks. So we're also going to do the same thing. We're once more going to open Explorer. There's the little folder icon at the bottom. So let's start with that. And you can see the menu icons obviously looks different. They basically got remodeled it or revamped and all that. But for the most part, the theory stays the same. You still have something on the left here called this PC in your Explorer. Gonna click on that. Opens this, and once again, just like on Windows 10, if I right click on this PC, there is an option that says properties. It's no longer the one on the way at the bottom, it's the second one from the bottom. I mean, I have to say, these buttons really look smooth, even though my buttons are not transparent like they're supposed to be because of graphics drivers and all that. It really looks really smooth. I love it. Anyway, getting back to business, I'm gonna go click here on properties. Menu's gonna open, of course. It looks somewhat different than what we're familiar with. So at first glance, it looks similar to what we've seen in Windows 10. But we've got this menu here on the left, which I think is pretty dope. That's pretty cool. Now, with regards to domains and workgroups, you'll notice there's nothing here on the right-hand side like we did with Windows 10, but you do have similar options here in the middle. There's your system protection and all kinds of other shenanigans. I'm going to go to domain and workgroup because that's obviously what we're looking for. Going to click on that puppy there, and it brings up the exact same menu that we saw earlier. Obviously just with smoother edges and stuff, but it's pretty much the same thing. There's the same little wizard, and there's the same button that's going to allow me to go and join domains and workgroups. So from this point forward, it's going to be exactly the same as what you're used to. This principle here has been exactly like that since XP, or even since before XP. Assuming you're running any machine from XP onwards that's able to join a domain, this is what you are going to see. Now, with regards to joining a cloud domain, like an Azure domain, that's a different principle. That can only be done from Windows 10 onwards. So in other words, Windows 10 and Windows 11. And just like of a normal domain joining ability, this is only available on professional or enterprise editions of Windows 10 and Windows 11. So yeah, more on that later. Let's get back to the presentation. Next up, we've got Credential Manager. I myself personally, not too big of a fan of this, but still, nonetheless, I need to explain this to you guys. So whether you guys want to go and use this is at the end of the day going to be up to you. That's your choice. So looking at the one on the right, which is Windows credentials, you see there's two of them. Windows credentials, and then the one on the left, which is web credentials. Now I'm going to give you guys a real life situation. Imagine you are in your home or a very small office environment in a workgroup situation, not domain situation, and you are trying to access other people's machines or a local small server of some sort. Now, if you're going to try and access your friends or family members' computers on the network, they're probably going to ask you for credentials. It's not set in stone. I mean, they could have turned that off. But assuming it's turned on, they might ask you for a username of sorts and a password of sorts on those machines. Now, if you have one, that's no problem. You can go and type that in. But imagine there's something you want to go and access on these machines quite regularly. Maybe it's movies. Maybe you've got an extra PC in your home. It's got all your movies and series and stuff on it. And ever so often, you want to go and access that PC because that's where all your movies and series is. Now, isn't it going to be annoying if you want to go to that PC and every time you try and connect to that machine over the network, it asks you for a username and password? Even though you have it, it's a bit of an annoyance to have to go and type it in every time. Now, wouldn't it be nice if Windows remembers your credentials and auto-completes that for you? So the second time and the third time you go to that machine, it's not going to ask you for those credentials again. Instead, you just be taken straight to the resources. That, my friends, is one example of Windows credentials. Now, in a small environment in your home and office, it's not the worst thing. It's kind of useful, actually, I have to say. The web credentials is my main reason for not liking this tool. Web credentials allows your machine to save your credentials for websites you're going to. I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard this, but if you go to any website online, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, Gmail, anything online that asks you for a username or an email address combined with a password, most of these platforms you'll find as soon as you type in your credentials, it's going to ask you, do you want your browser to remember this username and password? Now, there are folks that prefer to have the browser remember this, and there's folks that don't. My recommendation to you guys is never ever allow your PC to remember your credentials. I know it's a bit of an inconvenience because you have to go and type it in every time you want to go to something like your Facebook or whatever it is you're trying to log into. It's a bit of an inconvenience, I admit, but it's safer. When you have your computer or your browser store your credentials, that is stored locally in your machine. And you're literally handing me your credentials on a silver platter if I want to compromise your PC. It's extremely easy to break into someone's PC, whether it's over the internet or not. And when I break into your PC, all I need to do is just go to Web Credential Manager and I will find your passwords. It's easy as pie. Do not do that. So at the end of the day, that is, I suppose, your decision. If you want to go and do that and you want to put your own PC at risk, it's kind of like smoking all that. If you want to smoke and put your life at risk, that is your decision. But I'm telling you at least the risks involved here. So I need to at least explain the risks involved. When you go online to any website and you say, remember my credentials, it's going to store it here in web credentials. And if anyone borrows your computer, hacks your computer, over the network, over the internet, they can simply just go there, and that's one of many ways I can find your usernames and passwords. You're handing it to me on a platter. Do you really want to make it that easy? No. So let's move on to our next topic, which is, of course, Windows Hello. I did somewhat mention this. I think it might have been in Module 1, if I'm not mistaken. So we're currently in Module 2. So if I'm not mistaken, I think I might have mentioned this in Module 1 under Security. So Windows 10 and Windows 11, both of them have all kinds of new security. Windows 11 is not Windows Hello is not something that came out on Windows 11. It came out actually on Windows 10, and this is actually widely used, not just on your operating systems. You can actually find this on other platforms like Windows Azure. For those of you that know what that is, that's a cloud platform. Some people call it Azure, some say Azure. There's different ways of pronouncing it, of course. I don't even know if my way of pronouncing it is correct. Now, Hello is generally going to allow you to go and use some form of biometrics to go and unlock this machine. It could be fingerprints, it could be facial recognition. So that's what biometrics is. It's something that's got to do with you as a human being. So you, the user, is able to use some form of biometrics. It's probably going to be a human face, mind you. Why? Because Microsoft says about 3 to 4 devices out of 5 devices has a camera these days. Pretty much all laptops, almost all phones, and almost all tablets have a camera facing the user's face. Desktop PCs, maybe not so much, but you do get quite a lot of them that do have, external webcams. Gamers and all of these folks, they go and buy themselves webcams. And the idea here is, as soon as you sit in front of your computer and the camera looks at your face, it recognizes you and unlocks the device. Pretty dope, right? So that is to make your life easier. Now, we've made a lot of jokes about this over the years. It's going to ruin good old-fashioned action movies, don't you think? In a good old-fashioned action movie, you normally see someone being tortured, and they'll bust a kneecap and say, hey, what's the password? And maybe hold a weapon to a loved one's head and say, hey, we're going to take care of this person if you do not give us the password. And eventually, they'll maybe give up the password after enough torture. Now, all they have to do is just kind of grab you behind the neck and just hold your face in front of the camera and say, boop, pop, there we go. Device unlocked. That's going to completely ruin action movies, man. Okay, it's maybe not exactly that like that, but it's still fun to think about if you think about it. All right, folks, so let's move on to the next topic once more, configuring password policies and user properties. First off, I would like to point out that this is mostly done on the server side of things and not on the client side. You're going to do this on your server. So this is normally your server that's got Active Directory installed. So the menu we see in front of us right there, that little picture, that is taken in Active Directory. This is a server that's on premises, not in the cloud. It's an on-premises server that's got the role installed ADDS, Active Directory Domain Services. And that's going to give you Active Directory software, which of course allows you to manage your user accounts and groups and organizational units and group policies, and the list goes on. Now, if you go and right click on a user, which is what they did here, they went into the properties of a user called Aiden by the looks of it. If you go and do that, it's going to give you all kinds of tabs that you guys can see. And they're currently on the most common one, the default one, which is account. Here you have the ability to go and choose all kinds of shenanigans. I can go and say the person's password never expires. I can go and choose that the account is disabled. All kinds of other shenanigans as well as what you can go and choose. The point is, this is done on the Active Directory, which is a server on premises, not the cloud one. Now, speaking of the Active Directory, that actually happens to be one of our next topics. So let us go and have a look at Active Directory. Right before we switch over to a virtual machine that's got Active Directory installed on it and all of that, let's just quickly do a bit of a recap. So when it comes to Active Directory, you get two kinds. You either have your Active Directory on premises, which is ADDS, or you have your Active Directory in the cloud, which we normally refer to as Azure AD or Azure Active Directory. Now looking at the first one, the most common one that you guys are most likely familiar with, Active Directory Domain Services, better known as ADDS for short, that's the role you install on premises. So this is hosted on a Windows Server domain controller on premises. So you'll probably have this at your head office, and if you've got branch offices, you may or may not have them as well in the form of an RODC server. It houses all user accounts and groups and all those stuff we've mentioned earlier. Manages your user accounts and your groups. You have the ability to go and make accounts, delete accounts, reset passwords, all that kinds of stuff. Same goes for groups, of course, as well. So I've got full privilege there. So assuming you are an admin that has the ability to go and create this, you can go and pretty much do anything with regards to user accounts. Create them, delete them, change them as need be, and use them as need be. This domain controller, now on premises, provides identity and authentication services to domain services and shared resources. So as soon as someone on premises or otherwise, it's probably going to be on premises in most cases, tries to log on to their machine or even tries to log on to certain resources on the network, they have to first prove their identity. So you would remember we explained authentication and authorization. So this person needs to first prove they are an employee or a member of this organization and who they are. Once they've proven that they actually do work for this company, they will most likely be granted access to this resource, assuming the administrator has allowed it. So that's a bit enough, I think, of the on-premises side of things. Let's take a look at Azure Active Directory. So first of all, this is a cloud-based, no infrastructure environment. So it's all in the cloud on someone else's property. It's installed somewhere else, it's running somewhere else, it's someone else's problem. Who? Microsoft, of course, in this case. It's not running on your servers, it's not running on any of your property, which means no infrastructure. That's not a bad thing, folks. That's a good thing. It's not your problem. It manages user and group accounts exactly the same as the on-premises one. This is just done in the cloud. And if you so desire, you can actually go and keep the one on premises and at the same time get yourself an Active Directory in the cloud and synchronize these two with one another. It's not going to save you money, so that's unfortunately a drawback. It's probably going to cost you more money, in fact, but you're going to get way more benefits than drawbacks. You're going to get benefits like a synchronized hybrid Active Directory. I can go and create accounts on premises the old-fashioned traditional way, and they're going to synchronize to the cloud, and I can go and make them in the cloud, and it's going to synchronize back down on premises. And the list of benefits, of course, just goes on and on, but that's obviously a topic for server courses and Azure courses. In some cases, you'll probably find it on both of those courses. Now, going back to the Azure AD, this facilitates identity and authentication services for domain and non-domain devices and services, and can integrate with ADDS. Like I just said, if you so desire, you can go and set up a hybrid Active Directory environment, which essentially just means you've synchronized the two of one another. It's not as simple as I make it sound, but you actually need to go and install all kinds of software. For example, the Azure AD Connect tool or something you need to go and install. You're going to have to make sure you do a little housekeeping, a little house cleaning on your Active Directory on premises. Getting rid of any accounts and groups is no longer in use, making sure you go and fix any corrupt accounts that you may or may not have. And only once you've done all of that list of thingies, then and only then can you actually go and start the synchronization. Even then, there's no guarantee it will work. Alright folks, let's move on to the next section, which is configuring user account control. Now before we jump into this topic, if anyone is still watching this module up to this point, here's a bit of a side fun game for us to play. If you've got this far in the course, you can go type the word ICE in the comment section below. Now obviously we've done this once or twice in some of my other videos and some of my other courses. It's usually a random word of some kind. Now to make this more interesting this time around, unlike in the past where we just go type the word like we've been doing, I want you guys to be creative and actually work the word ICE into a random sentence of some kind. You can still go and type the word ICE on its own if that's what you want to go and do, but I think we can potentially have a lot of fun of this, and it could potentially get hilarious maybe if you guys go and type random sentences with the word ICE in it. So it's all about how creative can you get and how funny can you get. So if possible, try to be totally random and funny with your sentence. Let's see what you guys can come up with. I think once we get a couple of comments, this might actually potentially become hilarious. I can only imagine how it's going to confuse people who just read the comments who didn't actually watch the video up until this point. I'm already starting to laugh. Um, you have to keep it clean though, guys. No swearing or typing something that's going to insult someone or something. Let's have some nice, clean fun with this one. Nothing that's going to get us into trouble with the YouTube police, basically. If there even is such a thing. I don't know if there's such a thing, but in case there is, let's not, try and tempt fate. Keep it clean. Okay, then now, folks, you've got a task to go and do. So with that out of the way, let's get back to UAC. What is UAC? Now, first of all, UAC is a security feature that simplifies the ability of users to run as standard users and perform typical tasks. Some of which is, for example, things like UAC prompts users for administrative credentials if the task requires administrative permission. So your normal conventional standard users can't just go and willy-nilly do whatever they want on a normal machine. They have to, in some cases, provide credentials proving they are allowed to go and do what it is they're about to go and do. It could be that they're about to try and install something and maybe they're not allowed to go and install something. This could perhaps be a work PC and maybe only administrators are allowed to install something on those PCs. This is, of course, one way to go and prevent that. You can configure how much control the user has over the UAC prompting experience. So that's obviously going to be up to the administrator to choose how much control you want to delegate to the standard user. Now, if it's a standard user, it's probably going to prompt them for administrative permissions at some point sooner or later. If it's an administrator itself, it's just going to ask you, are you sure you want to do this or do that? It's not going to ask you for a password since you obviously already logged in as the administrator. Now, a little background here in case anyone's wondering when and where this came out. UAC was first seen on Windows Vista or Vista, depending on how you want to pronounce that. And this was approximately around towards the end of 2008, beginning of 2009. So up until XP, this didn't exist. And on Vista, or Vista, I'm just going to say Vista. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It was a very annoying feature because it would pop up for pretty much anything and everything. For pretty much everything you did on that operating system, this annoying prompt will pop up asking you, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do that? And in most cases, the screen would go completely dark, completely black, and the only thing you would see is this little prompt. Very, very annoying. So what most folks, including myself, did, what we did back then is we would just go and turn it off completely. Now there was an option if you went into UAC, which I'll show you guys in a bit. There was an option for you to go and untick a box or tick a box, which will prevent the background from going black or dark, and you just see the prompt still annoyingly. Or you could just go and turn it all off altogether, which is what most of us did. We just turned it off completely because it didn't really work. It was too annoying. And of course, when Windows 7 came out, I had high hopes that it would be better, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be completely resolve the issues. And luckily for us, on Windows 7, all the bugs and glitches and kinks were basically worked out. So thank goodness for that. They sorted that out relatively quickly, I must say. Very glad about that. Now, all the way from Vista up until where we are now of Windows 11, it has looked exactly the same if you go into the menus. The only difference, honestly, that I can say that I've seen over the years is that little tick box. So the tick box was on Windows Vista. I can't remember what it said because it's been more than a decade since I've seen it. So there was a tick box at the bottom of the little dragging bar, which I'm going to show you guys in a second. But ever since Windows 7 up until where we are now, it looks identical. No difference in options, no difference in what it looks like at all. Now, how does UAC work, or how UAC works in general, is in Windows, what happens is when a user performs a task which requires administrative permissions, generally speaking, it's going to either ask for a password or it's going to ask you whether you're sure you want to go and do the following action, depending on whether you're a standard user or an administrator. So for standard users, UAC prompts the user for credentials of a user with administrative permissions. So if you happen to be an administrator, you will have to provide your administrative credentials if you're logged in as a standard user. Not sure why you would be. Or you're going to have to go and acquire the credentials of an administrator, but most likely going to have to ask them for a favor or ask them to come to your PC and obviously type in their credentials so you can do whatever it is you're about to go and do. Most likely to go and install something or uninstall something. If you are the administrator and you're about to go and do something, it's not going to ask you for your password, but UAC prompts the user for permission to complete the task. Basically, just going to say, hey, are you extra sure you want to go and do this? Now, you might wonder, but why does it do that if you're already logged in as the administrator? This is to prevent malware from going rampant on your computer. So if you've got malware of some kind on your machine that tries to do certain things automatically, it's going to get stopped by that window that asks for your confirmation. Let's say the malware tries to install something, for argument's sake. Now, obviously, it's going to pop up with this little prompt that says, hey, are you sure you want to install this? And at that point in time, it's going to stop. This automatic installation is going to stop up until you get to your PC and you realize that, hey, hang on a cotton pick a minute. Why is my machine asking me if I want to install this when I did not try to install something? And obviously that's going to draw attention to it, and then you're going to go and investigate. If you're not sure what's going on because you're not an IT user, you're obviously going to go and grab the nearest IT guy and say, hey, check it out, what's going on? Now, with regards to the things that it can actually prompt you for, whether you're an administrator or a user, here's a bit, or some of them, UAC elevation prompts. So we've got things like install or uninstall an application, which I've mentioned earlier. So obviously, if you're a standard user, it's going to prompt you for administrator credentials. If you are an administrator, it's basically just going to ask you if you're sure you want to go and do whatever it is you're about to go and do, which is now in this case to install or uninstall an application. Other things you or the administrators could possibly encounter is install a device driver, install Windows updates, configure parental controls, install an ActiveX control, maybe just to go and open the Windows firewall, to go and change a user's account type, from standard to administrator or otherwise, modify UAC settings in some sort of manner, configure remote desktop access, so who's got access, who doesn't, add or remove a user account, in other words, creating one or deleting one, copy or move files into the programs and files directory or into the Windows directory, schedule automated tasks. This can be via various platforms, but it's most likely going to be via Task Scheduler. That's something that's built into both the client operating systems as well as the server operating systems. It's going to also prompt you if you want to restore system backup files. It's going to prompt you if you want to configure automated backups and also browsing to another user's directory. These are just some of the things it's going to prompt you for. The list, of course, goes on and on. So here's a bit of a picture for you guys of what it more or less looks like, the UAC. That picture there is what it looks like since Windows 7. Now, Vista looked exactly the same, except below that little option there on the left that says never notify, there was a tick box. What it said, for the life of me, I cannot remember. It's been about 13, 14 years since I've seen it. Can't remember. Obviously, time is not kind to us. But since Windows 7 all the way to Windows 11, it looks exactly the same. So just to show it to you guys, let's quickly switch over to that Windows 10 and Windows 11 virtual machine. I'm going to first switch over to Windows 10. Okay, folks, here we are on Windows 10. All you need to go and do to access that picture we've just seen, you go to the bottom. Quickest and easiest way is just to go and type in UAC, like so. And you'll see it says change user account control settings. It's going to be pretty much the same thing on the Windows 11. It's just going to be a different place where the search bar is now, obviously. Going to go click on that sucker there, and there we see the picture. Now what we did up until Vista is we were just going to drag this all the way to the bottom, and that tick box, that mythical tick box which we can see, used to be here. So I'm going to cancel this. Let's switch over to Windows 11.
A few moments later.
Here we are on Windows 11, and you can go around the search box there, or you can go there. So I'm just going to go say search. And here at the top, I'm going to go and say UAC, and it says the same thing. Change user account control settings. Click on that sucker and you see the exact same menu that you would have seen on Windows 10 and all the other previous versions of Windows, of course. Alright folks, let's go back to my presentation. So as you can see, this window, nothing has changed over the years. It's been timeless. The only one that looked slightly different was, of course, the Vista one, which I've been bragging about so much. So that, folks, pretty much concludes UAC. I think you know everything that you need to know. That brings us to our next main section in this video, our last main section, which is implementing device registration. Now, with regards to device registration, most of you folks will probably already know what a domain device is, or should I say domain joined device is. It's basically a device that has been joined to a domain. Usually, this domain will be your company domain, and the device itself will also, in most cases, belong to your company. That's obviously not set in stone, it's just usually the case. When a device is joined to the domain, users can access company resources without having to go and enter the credentials every time they want to go and access company resources. So that's obviously a very clear benefit with being joined to a domain. Now, users can have a similar experience from a device that you have enabled for device registration, but without requiring the device to be a domain member. So what we're saying here is you do not need to have a device joined to domain now to be able to have the same benefits as a domain joined device. So that also means you do not necessarily need to use a company device. This can be a personal device and in most cases will be a personal device. It also is not limited to a desktop or a laptop like it used to be. You can go and use a phone or a tablet if you want to go and do that. Device registration provides a single sign-on experience. So for the folks not familiar with that term, it means the user only provides their username and password once, and then they won't get prompted for again. Pretty much like a domain situations where you're going to go type your username and password to prove you're a member or an employee. Once you've done that, you will be able to access resources without continuously having to go and provide these details. Now, device registration provides you the same experience. It provides you with SSO, single sign-on experience. You provide your credentials to prove you are a part of this company. Once you've done that and you've proven that, it's not going to go and prompt you for it over and over again, thus not being annoying. In a nutshell, users with domain accounts can implement device registration on their personal devices, like I've said, if their company has the appropriate infrastructure in place, of course. Now, with regards to challenges to data access for multiple device types, like my title here states, in the past, companies allowed access to company apps and data only to users who logged on or signed in with a domain account from a company-owned domain member device. So it had to be a company device. This device had to be linked or joined to the company domain, and that would be the only way you can go and access company apps and company documents and pretty much any company resource. That is no longer the case. So this is, however, changing, and companies are moving from device-centric approach to a more user-friendly, people-centric approach. These days, as you guys know, users work from home in all kinds of places except the office. Pretty much anywhere and everywhere except the office. Kinda, huh? Users mostly use their own devices these days, and they want to or need to use company apps and access company data. This is, of course, where device registration comes in, as you might expect. People can't just willy nilly access company apps and data from anywhere, and also not just from any device. That, of course, would be a major security nightmare. Now, with device registration, on the other hand, users can register their own personal devices and gain access to company resources, like I said earlier. Users mostly no longer utilize traditional desktop computers. Instead, they rely on other devices, like I said earlier. These devices come in all kinds of form factors like tablets, smartphones, and more. There's probably many devices I don't even know about. Sometimes devices are not domain members because the company does not own these devices. And also, sometimes the operating system on these devices isn't Microsoft. Of course not. Most of these devices tend to be a smartphone or a tablet, sometimes a laptop. And because they are phones and tablets and stuff, what is the operating system going to be? Now, yes, you do get Microsoft for phones and tablets, but let's face it, most people have Android or iOS on their phones and tablets. Those operating systems can't join the company domain, even if they tried to. So, Android and iOS, they couldn't care less about joining Microsoft's domains. So it becomes a bit tricky when it comes to accessing company resources. So registering a non-domain joined device, whether they belong to the company or not, will give the users access to the same resources they could previously access with their old traditional desktop PC at the office, which had Windows installed, which was joined to the domain. Pretty nice workaround, isn't it? Okay, so let's take a look at Microsoft's device strategy framework. Device registration comes with various scenarios where sometimes users have full out control on devices, but this also comes with its own unique risks, like having no company applied policies. In some cases, you'll find users can use their own devices for work, but to do this, company policies will need to be applied to help secure it all. The scenarios you see in this picture can be summarized as follows. There's quite a few, as you guys can see. If we start at the bottom right there with the blue one that says on your own. In this model, employees provide their own device. There are no security policies in place, no organizational management of the device, and any device is pretty much acceptable. You can literally go and use any device for anything. There's no security, nada, nothing. You've got full control basically as the user is what we're saying. This is a very open approach, but obviously it prevents the highest security risk you can imagine. That's a no-go for most companies. If we look at the one at the bottom left, which is called bring your own device, this model includes two distinct variations on policy management, which is the red one and, well, of course, the purple ones you guys see there. In the one situation, the user brings their own device, and as part of the company policy, the company does not manage those devices. The employees, on the other hand, are responsible for implementing and managing company policies on their devices. This is a flexible policy, but it also prevents security risks. The other one we have there is bring your own managed device. So this is the most traditional format for bringing your own device. It's pretty much the most common one you would find in most companies. In this model, the employees provide their own devices and the company enforces its policies to allow devices to access company data. The device is fully managed by the company. So that really is the most common one you guys are going to experience. So if you are working for a company or you have a company or you've seen a company where folks are allowed to go and use their own devices for the purposes of work, usually the situation there is, even though it's their devices, company policies will be forced down upon those devices. So yes, in your own free time, you can go watch movies and play games on it. But for work resources and stuff, guess what? Company policy is going to be forced down upon that device. Now, looking at the option at the top right of this picture, in that model, the company actually provides a mobile device to employees, so those employees can perform their jobs remotely. The company often allows employees to choose from a list of approved devices that are fully compatible with the company's apps, and of course, their management infrastructure. Now, looking at the last one we've got here, which is the one there at the top left, in that model, the company has one device approved for the company's mobile platform, and this device is provided to employees. End of story. Now, ironically, speaking of end of story, it's also the end of module 2, folks. So, like usual, if you've enjoyed this module and you feel like you might have learned something, or maybe you like that hidden game I had in the module for you guys, please give the video a like. The more you like it, the more YouTube will push it out to other folks. And that now obviously also means I get to help more folks who can't afford to actually pay for stuff like this. Also, if you yourself would like to know when more of these modules gets uploaded, also of course go and hit the subscribe button. Lastly, folks, a special thank you to the supporters of this channel, and if you'd like to be one of them yourself, you can find that information in the video description down below. Alright, see you folks in module 3.
If you love me, let me know. If you don't, then let me